It's the beginning of March Madness, and if you're watching this and you don't know what I'm talking about, that's because you're one of the weirdos like us who thinks about politics 24/7. But the average person, as we record this on Thursday, as you watch this on Friday or maybe over the weekend, normal humans are at a bar or at home. They're watching college basketball and somehow getting their picks incredibly wrong. That's what normal people are doing, but we're here instead. We're talking politics. There's a lot going on right now with this being deadline week for committees down in Springfield. We've got campaigns heating up for 2026 while we're a week and a half away from the local elections for 2025. There's so much going on. So we're going to dive right into it. Right now we've got two guests with us. We might have a third joining us. I'll introduce them if they do join us. In the meantime, I'm excited to introduce our guests that are here. Sharon Langlotz-Johnson is a policy expert and previously served as a supervisor of Palatine Township and a police officer. She's a returning guest. Sharon, glad to have you.
Thanks, Colin. Glad to be here.
Your video's popping in and out. I'm not sure if that's on purpose.
Sorry, I don't know why it won't let me
All right,
go.
we'll keep rolling. We've got Katie Clancy also joining us as a returning guest. She's the chair of the Illinois Center Right Coalition. She works for the Center for American Rights, and previously she worked with the Illinois Opportunity Project. Hey, Katie, how are you?
Thanks for having me again.
Of course. Thanks for being crazy enough to be willing to come on again, especially in a week like this where we got lots of heady stuff to talk about.
Yeah, no, it'll be exciting.
We have also with us, as always, our yin and yang of Illinois politics. We've got Smiley and Frowny. We've got Michael and Chris. What's going on, guys?
12 more
Good to see
days,
ya.
Colin. 12 more days.
Can you
Yeah,
survive,
almost
Chris?
there.
I mean, we got Michael getting stuff done. How many people are in your March Madness pool, Michael?
Oh, 60.
Yeah. So if you want to know how Michael gets stuff done, he's grassroots even in his March Madness pool. I've never seen a pool that big.
Hey,
So
we
that's
gotta
impressive.
bring in the big bucks. Somebody's gonna go home a big winner.
There you go. Hopefully it's
Not
you.
me.
Hopefully
Nah,
it's
nah,
you.
nah.
Then I could pay you less.
I just enjoy everybody else's success. So go for it, guys.
If it's
I
you,
think
I'm sure the
paying us
Pritzker
less would,
administration will come looking for their cut of your winnings.
Oh,
I,
probably true.
I think paying us less would violate certain labor laws, Colin.
Yeah, they already hate me over there. It's fine. Um, all right, let's go on to our first topic here. We've talked about the Homeschool Act now 2 weeks in a row. Let's make it 3 weeks in a row because this is hot news. Every cycle this happens, every session this happens, where something gets hot, and most of the time it's something we just did not predict. I don't think anybody could have predicted what's going on here with the Homeschool Act. Frankly, because nobody on the left has been dumb enough to poke these homeschoolers in the eye for at least 5 years or so. But they've done it again, and they're feeling it again. Massive opposition has arisen. What, like 45,000 witness slips have been filed against this. Meanwhile, Democrats don't care. They pass it out of committee. It's going to make its way to the House floor. I know everybody who's on the podcast this week wanted to talk about this topic. So go ahead. Whoever would like to go, jump on. What are your thoughts on this whole thing?
Well, look at the power. Look at the power of these homeschoolers and those families that filled out 40,000 witness slips. I'm sure they're going to continue to, this is just a temporary setback for them. I'm sure they're going to continue to fight against this bill, and they should, because hopefully we can do something and this won't pass. But I think you look at, last year it was the private schools and the scholarship program. They, cut that and put an end to that, did not vote to renew it. Now here they are going after homeschoolers. I think a lot of it is driven by, we have a serious problem with our education system in the state of Illinois. You see the testing scores. I know that you've read some of those off in the past about how our students aren't proficient in the categories that they should be. And it's no wonder that parents are looking for other options. I think this is just a way for the teachers union and and those entities to try to get more people back into the public school system because they're just hemorrhaging students.
Yeah, I tend to learn if you try to force parents and kids to do something they don't want, they're not really going to react the way you think. I mentioned and you did, Michael, too, the witness slips that have been filed, but also just the bodies in Springfield. They had a big rally day down in Springfield. There were multiple tweets by people, media members and lawmakers who pointed out that was one of the biggest crowds they've seen in the Capitol. This is lit a huge subset of people in Illinois on fire.
Yeah, I had Fox News on in the background yesterday while working, and every morning program was live from the Springfield Rotunda, talking about this issue, especially highlighting, you know, it's one thing to continue to go after homeschooling, private schools, any educational choice in Illinois, but they're not really presenting a positive alternative. Basically, everything we see, whether it's lower test scores, radical ideology being taught in the classroom and forcing kids into uncomfortable situations they should not be in. Just there's just no better alternative that they're offering. And I think I mentioned this the last time I was on, is that all these states that are growing populations are cutting taxes and expanding educational choices. And it just seems like Illinois is doing everything opposite of what growing, vibrant states are doing.
Yeah, I mean it's a chicken and egg thing, right? You wonder which leads to what, but it's pretty clear it's a spiral down to, the bottom of the toilet drain. Katie, do you find it to be a bit hypocritical? When I see JB Pritzker go on the internet or the national media and talk about how dare Trump want to cut the Department of Education instead of proposing plans as to how he's going to fix our failing schools and our failing test scores. And I'm like, okay, so what is your plan to fix our failing schools and our poor test scores in the state of Illinois? Like you're attacking Trump and you're saying where's his plan? Well, then where's your plan, JB Pritzker? Where is that plan in Illinois to improve our schools? Because I think a lot of us would love to see that. We want to see a better education system in the state. Education is the silver bullet. This is the future. This is the one of the most important things we could ever do as leaders in the state. So, JB Pritzker, where is your plan?
Yeah, and right before this too, I was scrolling through X and I see that Randy Weingarten is in Chicago, helping out her buddies at CTU, not only protesting, whatever possible moves the Trump administration are going to make, as well as their ridiculous budget that they're pushing forward. And I think too, like again, I was touching on it before, obviously it's the educational aspect of it, but just so many stories of, abuse as well. There's bullying that goes on. There's, actual faith-based families out there that want to provide their children with a faith-based education. That's basically everything against what these sponsors of the bills support are strong families and strong faith-based educational system. So it's very clear who they see the enemies are, and those are private schools and homeschool parents.
Well,
Well, and you look at some of the
Michael, hold on one
headlines.
second.
Go ahead.
Let's let Sharon go ahead, but I'm sure you got a good point to add after that.
yeah, I was just going to say, the people that I've talked to, it's basically, the government overreach, obviously. But, just for example, why they don't want their kids there, that now they want to remove the ability of principals to suspend a child from school for bad behavior or to expel them, basically. But, they're not allowing even the locals to have that control. Now they want you to go to a superintendent. Well, Palatine has what, 16 schools in District 15? Like, I can imagine a superintendent's not going to have time to visit every single case to decide whether a child should be suspended from school or not. And then they want to remove the ability to suspend a kid between K through 2 or K through second grade. So, they just keep adding on more and more reasons why people don't want to send their children to the public schools.
Well, and as Katie mentioned, I mean, I have several clowns of the week this week that I'll get to towards the end that are related to the way we're educating kids in our school systems and things that are being done badly and poorly. And I mean, we all see what's being played out in some of these school districts right now. And a lot of parents, if they have the ability, are thinking, should we do something different? I mean, this is something my wife and I struggle right now with little Teddy. What do? We want him to have the social experience of being in a school with multiple kids. And so that's appealing to us at a public school, but we also want him to get a high quality education and not be exposed to a lot of this garbage. But it's a struggle for every parent, and we're not even in it yet, and we're dreading having to make that kind of a decision.
Well, I think just like you said, Colin, there's a lot of families out there that are looking for an alternative to the public education system, whether it's because of the content that's being taught or, look at the headlines we've seen just in the last week or so of, inappropriate content, biological males, in the locker room with female athletes. You've got the teacher up north that was having sex with one of the students. You've got the professor at SIU Carbondale. There are all these things that are going on where parents are not comfortable, putting their child in an environment like that. And instead of the state of Illinois trying to address those problems and get the test scores up so our students are actually prepared for the real world, they're trying to block parents from exploring these alternatives. Let's paperwork homeschoolers to death so they just give up and send their kid to public school. Or let's take scholarships away for disadvantaged children because God forbid they go to a private school and get a good education. So here we
Yeah,
are.
yeah, it's unless you're the child of, let's say, J.B. Pritzker or Stacey Davis Gates. Otherwise, yeah, we want you to go to a public school.
Right, because they take away every opportunity for these low-income families to afford private school, like when they took away the Invest in Kids Act, which was a disaster. And this is it's just going down the path of where these schools are going to be overcrowded because nobody can afford to go to private schools. So all the Catholic schools are already closing, so more Catholic schools are going to be closing down, and then everybody's going to be going to public school. And God forbid you homeschool your child. So I don't know what the reasoning behind this really is. I mean, maybe again, it's as I've said previously on this podcast, Democrats feel invincible, and if they don't feel like screwing with the homeschoolers is going to be electorally disadvantageous to them, and they're just going to do it because, like, well, why not?
Yeah, well, to that point, I will say kudos to the Republicans, especially House Republicans who've been all over this. I've seen press release after press release. Usually I like to call people out and give them kudos, but there's so many, I don't want to miss some at this point. But I've got 6, 7, 8 different press releases here from House Republicans. I saw photos of a lot of them interacting with the homeschool kids, a few senators as well, not to miss their contributions as well. But clearly, Republicans are jumping on this. I saw a press release from the state party, AFP's doing TV ads. I mean, this is not. I see year after year we see softballs like this, just ephus pitches going right over the center of the plate, and conservatives and Republicans just completely miss it. They are going all out, swinging real hard at this one, and they should. So kudos to Republicans and conservatives. This is a big overreach by Democrats, and if you play this right, this is something that can help propel you to some victories in 2026. But you got to keep at it. You can't just put press releases out in March of 2025. You got to beat this thing back in May. You got to keep these people engaged all the way through next year. Now the hard work is keeping them engaged for a year and a half, not just shaking their hands in the Capitol. So I'm glad to see what I see today, but more work is certainly ahead.
Well, and Collin, there was right after COVID, or during COVID, I should say, there was an extraordinary amount of increase in homeschoolers, and who continue today. And there's so many co-ops right now in Lake County, Cook County, like down here in our area. There's a ton of co-ops. And quite frankly, every kid that I've met that's been homeschooled is far more advanced than any public school kid I've seen. And it's every single one of them is way ahead of most of the public schools.
Yeah, I mean, listen, there's certainly some good public schools out there. I don't want to toss the baby out with the bathwater, especially out here in the suburbs. There's some pretty good, public school systems, but overall, there's definitely work that needs to be done. And as you said, I mean, there's good reasons why parents might choose to go another route. As we talked about on last week's podcast, guess what? They're paying their taxes, so it's not like they're hurting the public school. If they decide they want to do something, that's their right as parents. It's their children, not the state's children, not government's children. And I think that's forgotten sometimes by these policymakers. Michael, you get the final word. Go ahead with the thought you've been trying to put in.
No, I was just going to say, kind of along the lines of what you said a second ago, just don't forget, like, if you're somebody that is passionate about this issue and you're aggravated about this legislation, like, this time next year, 16 months from now, when it's time to start voting for candidates or circulating petitions for candidates, like, get involved. Like, the Democrats, I feel like, have done a very good job of, they have this mindset where they know when they can piss somebody off and how long it takes for them to forget that they were pissed off. And we've seen that across the board, so don't let it get away from you.
I mean, yeah, there's a reason this is being done in 2025 and not 2026. There's certainly something to that. So if you're watching this and you're honked off right now, you got to find a way to stay honked off for a year and a half, not just 2 months. All right, let's move to our next topic. Speaking of getting honked off and maybe doing way too much about it, let's talk about violence in politics. JB Pritzker continues to stoke the fires here. His chief of staff went out last week and talked about how the fight right now is between those who want to fight and those who want to cave. It'll be remembered if you're an elected official and you're not willing to fight. It's just fight, fight, fight is everything they keep talking about. And the governor himself keeps going around the country talking about how we've got to fight and this is our moment to stand up. And the language he's using is super incendiary, and threatening lawmakers, especially those in the Senate who dared work with President Trump to keep the government open, even though these same exact lawmakers a year or two ago said it would be the worst thing in the world if you let the government close, but whatever. And you see this continuing to play out with this increasingly violent rhetoric that's being used. And what's the result? The result is you go on Twitter, you go on Instagram or wherever, you're seeing videos of Tesla dealerships being spray painted and graffiti. You're seeing Teslas themselves being smashed up. You're seeing people going to town halls, not just of Republicans, but Democrats. You saw Sean Casten's town hall had to be broken up by police because of screaming. You saw Chuck Schumer had to cancel his book tour and has had to cancel his town halls. This is not just happening now in Republican town halls. It's happening in Democrat town halls. There's protests outside of their town halls, outside of their offices. There's just lots of anger being put out in op-eds and social media posts and videos. This is growing and growing and growing, and this is March. I mean, Trump's been in office for 3.5 minutes. Like, my worry is where the heck does this go next month and the month after and the month after, especially when you've got people like Pritzker who are intentionally fanning the flames. I mean, I can't believe we're living in a world where Gavin Newsom is trying to calm Democrats down and JB Pritzker is shooting lighter fluid on the whole situation. I mean, it's the opposite of what I would have expected a couple years ago. But here we are in presidential politics. JB Pritzker sees his lane. The question is how much of this country has to burn so that JB Pritzker can become president? That's my question. So what do you guys think about the violence we're seeing in politics and specifically how much Pritzker has been encouraging that?
Well, I think it's interesting. A week or two ago, we were talking about these Republican town halls, and you had, more liberal constituents showing up and really, raising hell. Now they're going to the Democrat town halls and raising hell there too. So I guess they're equal opportunity hell raisers. But the Democratic Party's got a lot of problems right now because, they see Trump as like this existential threat because of the rhetoric that Democrats and the media have been using against him for the past, 9 years. And when you have the rhetoric that high, well, then the Democrat elected officials can never do enough. It's not going to be satisfactory. So they're really in a tough spot. Obviously, on the violence aspect, it's just totally uncalled for. And now they're, vandalizing private businesses and spray painting cars. And even, they see a car in a parking lot, a Tesla in a parking lot, they're vandalizing that too. And it's like, well,
we were talking before we came on, and there was a video I watched of a dude literally digging in his pants, pulling out feces and smearing it on the Tesla. Like, at what point do you get to in your brain that that's acceptable behavior? And it's just, you're right, Michael. I mean, the left has created this environment where now you don't have a choice. I mean, they've made this bad, now they have to live in it. If you've convinced the whole country that they should be afraid, that Trump is a fascist and a dictator, and that Republicans are existentially evil, and all these things that they've convinced themselves of, that they think is 100% true, you now have no choice here. You can't pull down that rhetoric. There's a reason why people are angry at Gavin Newsom, is because they genuinely believe this stuff they've been spouting for years, that the sky is falling, the world is ending, Republicans want to burn down our democracy, and that it's all over. Like, if that's what you truly believe, which they've scared people over the years into believing that, now you have no choice but to resort to this incredible level of violence and taking it way, way too far. They've created this environment over the years, and now they're stuck with it.
Well, I just wanted to point out that too, Tesla became popular because of the Democrats' insistence on everything becoming battery operated. They wanted the cars to all be battery operated. And without Tesla, they probably wouldn't even have half the cars that are out there that are battery. But, there's that point there. So they're the ones who promoted that guy. And now they're against him. You even have Jimmy Kimmel telling people, to go after cars. It's ridiculous. But my other point is that you're talking about the violence constantly, at least once a week, you hear a legislator either in committee or on the floor talking about the threats that they're getting all the time for this or that, or the violence. Their families are being threatened, or it was one of the legislators made a comment just, I think, yesterday about another legislator telling people to threaten her family, which was the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. And, they're the ones who are doing it now. They're promoting this. So they think it's okay for them to do it, but they don't want anybody else to do it.
Well, there's two things in that, Sharon. Number one, you're right. Let's talk about Tesla. I just quickly looked it up so I could give the stats. I mean, they created this market. Back in 2019, they had 80% of the US EV market.
Yep.
Now they're at about 50%, a hair below 50% globally. They're at about 50% of battery electric vehicles. I mean, if you believe that that climate change is real and that humans are causing it and that we must move to electric, which is obviously the religion of many people on the left, then Tesla is a huge part of the solution to that problem. But oh no, not anymore because they're conservative, so now they're evil. Like, who cares about the planet anymore because we don't like Elon Musk? I mean, the hypocrisy there is ridiculous. And then as it comes to just the encouragement of the violence, I've seen a lot of people post on this. Like during the Biden years, yeah, Republicans were honked off, but during those 4 years, did you see us spray painting businesses we didn't agree with? Did you see us smashing up cars? Did you see us, advocating for violence on social media, screaming at town halls? Like every time we get this, Trump's first term, we had the BLM riots and protests and peaceful protests, and looting, and now this time who knows where this is going to go? But Trump's first term, it rose an incredible rise of violence, which was driven by people on the left. You would not be crazy to assume that it's likely to happen again here in his second term.
Yeah, I mean, to bring it back also to like Illinois politics and, these local groups who are supporting these protests. I don't know if I've seen Pritzker like specifically, talk about Tesla or things like that, but like a good question to pose to him and Democrats would be like, okay, so are we putting a 4-year pause on our path to renewability by 2050? Like, is that what your guys' plan is? Um, so it's just like, again, just how number one, disingenuous they are if they actually think like climate change is going to ruin everything. And number two, like, again, we kind of were chatting about this off the record, before we started this podcast, but kind of talking about who's the actual customers of Teslas. But it's not even just the customers, it's like who's the actual workforce. I think I heard like, there's like 80,000 American jobs that were created by Tesla. So it's like not only are they just completely forgetting about, their climate Bible, like you mentioned, but also hurting an American company that uplifts working class workers in this country. So I'd like that to actually be posed to Pritzker or, these other Democrats who love the media attention that they're getting.
Yeah, it's fair. All right, let's go to our next topic here. I'm going to start off with a rant. So to our guests and Michael and Chris, just give me a moment here because I got to tell you, I pissed myself off just writing all these details down for the agenda. We're going to talk about how much JB Pritzker does or just doesn't care about Illinois, and this has really come to light this week, and it's been crystallized for me this week. And I'm going to take this a bit further than I've ever taken this on a single podcast. So we're almost 100 episodes in, and you're going to hear me say some words I've never said before, which is I genuinely believe JB Pritzker needs to resign. I don't say that lightly, but I genuinely believe at this point it's time. Let me tell you why. JB Pritzker has all the time in the world to campaign around the country, go to New Hampshire, go to Washington, D.C., and sit for interviews, do all these tours to attack Trump and get in the media. And then when he finally gets back to Illinois, he does a statewide tour that's just focused on his opposition to Trump. He's got all these different stops around the state with no focus on Illinois politics, the needs of Illinoisans, but it's all just press pops in different media markets focused on the things that he wants to talk about with Donald Trump. Where should he be? As the governor of Illinois, where should he actually be during this time? Well, let's talk about central Illinois and southern Illinois, which just faced massive storms and tornadoes. You've got schools that are closed for weeks in Neoga. You've got families and small businesses devastated in St. John's and central Illinois. I mean, there is real needs in this state. And you know what? Before Pritzker was so focused on running for president, he'd be down there right now getting the media pop, getting the press pop, but yes, also seeing what he can do to help. That's what a real governor is doing right now. Where else should he be? He should be down in Springfield. I mean, he gave this big speech with his state of the state slash budget address about these things that he wanted to do this during the session. And even Rich Miller pointed out just today, as we record this on Thursday, that two of his major initiatives looks like they're going to go down in flames. The first one being his push to abolish townships, and the second one being trying to allow community colleges to allow 4-year or to do 4-year degrees. Both of those looks like they're going down in flames because Pritzker's not around. And I'll quote Rich Miller even said, perhaps less gallivanting around the country and more focus on the state he was elected to lead might be advised. It's pretty damn good advice because I got to tell you, when Pritzker came out with this plan to let community colleges provide 4-year degrees, I did a triple take because we've done a lot of work with some really good community colleges. We've got one right here in our backyard in Harper, and they've done some innovative work partnering with 4-year institutions to provide those 4-year degrees on their campuses. This is already happening. And yet Pritzker clearly is not even involved in the state to the point where he realized that. I bet they did some sort of poll at some point that said community colleges polls really well, because he's talked a lot about community colleges in the last couple months. It's clearly poll driven, but the dude wasn't even aware that already in this state there were more than 3,000 successful partnerships between community colleges and 4-year degree programs. It's already happening, and that he wanted to go and blow it all up because some poll somewhere said he should start talking about community colleges. And it's not just here. We're seeing things unravel at his agencies. Just some examples from just this past week. The DOJ just launched a probe into Illinois' treatment of people with disabilities, examining why the state unnecessarily institutionalizes adults with disabilities while abuse and neglect run rampant at state-operated developmental centers. So the DOJ is looking into Illinois because of these serious problems. It was also released this week that DCFS has been failing to produce reports examining what went wrong in hundreds of cases of child deaths and thousands of serious injuries. DCFS is not following the law and putting out public reports as to why those happened. That's Pritzker's administration, and they don't care. For the second year in a row, we've seen that Illinois has failed to release budgeted funding for after-school programming. And as a result, thousands of school staff have been laid off. 27,000 students are not getting access to after-school programming that they've been promised. And this is mostly in Black and brown communities and among low-income families. Those people that Pritzker does ad after ad talking about how he cares about them. And yet 2 years in a row now, we see this exact same problem. We saw the OEIG, I said it right, continue to come out with reports of fraud by state employees. They released yet another batch of employees this week that they've identified, Pritzker administration employees, I might add, who defrauded the PPP program. We're seeing this up and down in all the Pritzker administration or departments, that we're seeing this kind of fraud and abuse be reported week after week, month after month. Last one I'll say here is the Prisoner Review Board is now being sued because of a situation that we reported on a year ago, as did many others, where a violent criminal was released by the Prisoner Review Board, and the very next day he went and tried to murder his former, I think, wife or girlfriend. In the process, killed an 11-year-old boy right in front of another 5-year-old boy. And this is somebody that never should have been let out. Even Pritzker's administration finally admitted that it was a screw-up. Republicans have been trying ever since to reform the Prisoner Review Board, and Pritzker and some Senate Democrats refuse to let it happen. It is story like this. This is just 1 week of stories. Just since our last recording, this is how many things we see coming out of the failures of J.B. Pritzker's administration. It is clear at this point that he's not even in the state. He doesn't care about this state. Forget talking about whether or not he should run for re-election. It's time for J.B. Pritzker to just go away. Go run for president. Give somebody else the job of governor who actually cares about the Illinoisans in this state, the working families of this state who need some help, and they're not getting it from a governor who just has stars in his eyes and wants to be president. It's time, JB. Get the hell out of here and give somebody else the job who's actually going to do it. There's my rant. Anybody else have thoughts?
I mean, I totally agree. And I think, that's all things that happened in the last week. And then you've got, IDNR being audited by the Department of Interior. We talked about that a couple of weeks ago. The state of Illinois is getting sued for Title IX violations, but Pritzker's traveling all over the country talking about how he's standing up for women. Well, Apparently not. If you're getting sued by the DOJ for Title IX violations, so the list just keeps growing. Unfortunately, other than I think smoke-filled room, there's very little people out, in the media that are drawing attention to these issues. He just gets a pass all the time, and it's
I
sad.
just want to point out that he is in Romeoville today, uh, actually with Lauren Underwood. So this is a federal issue, standing up for seniors because he is trying to save Social Security. I have not seen anything that said that Donald Trump or anybody else is taking away Social Security, but he is pretending that these are issues. And again, that somehow they're being the news is picking up these crazy stories that aren't even in existence. They're making stuff up. But here's a guy who should be dealing with the massive debt of Illinois, and instead he's running around doing federal work or arguing federal work that is false.
Yeah, let me quickly just introduce, as you saw, and then Chris, I'll let you go. But just quickly for those who saw Dan Caulkins jump in to join us. Thank you, Dan, for jumping in last minute. We had a guest cancel, so Dan's been kind enough to jump in. Dan, we'll get your thoughts on the topic in a minute, but Chris, go ahead.
Well, I've been the devil's advocate for Pritzker's administration ever since this podcast started. I'm not going to do that today. I don't have intention to do that today. But I will say this, that the first 2 years of the Pritzker administration, from when he got sworn in through basically COVID, Pritzker, I think, had a lot of wind in his sails, and I think he did do the job as governor. You could argue he did a bad job, and I'd probably agree with you, but I think he was here to do the job as governor. And ever since COVID was over and Pritzker mentally made the transition to run for president, it became apparent that his mind was elsewhere. And there's nobody in the legislature on the Democratic side who's willing to say the emperor has no clothes and that nothing's getting accomplished in the state and the governor's office isn't being helpful. This wouldn't be a new concept with a Democrat in the governor's mansion and two Democratic held systems, House of the Legislature, because they did it with Rod Blagojevich. They threw Rod Blagojevich's ass out. They were going to throw Rod Blagojevich's ass out even if he didn't get indicted, because Mike Madigan hated Rod Blagojevich. Okay, they gave Pat Quinn a heartburn every chance they could get. Okay, this wouldn't be a new concept, but the issue I think becomes is that you have Chris Welch, who I don't know what his agenda is. I don't know if he knows what his agenda is, but very rarely do you ever see him in the public breaking with the governor. The only one you do see is Don Harmon, but Don Harmon's not willing to go full boat and say Pritzker's not doing his job, because why would he say that, such a thing? But the legislature isn't standing up publicly, so there's nobody else publicly saying that Pritzker's doing a bad job, except for Collin Corbett and the Smokeful Room podcast, which according to Michael Butler is apparently the media, and I'll be requesting my press passes from here on out.
Yeah, listen, there's been a few here and there. I mean, every once in a while you see, I credit where it's due. Sometimes Illinois and Patrick Finkston will come out and say it. Every once in a while, even like I said, even Rich Miller will give him a ding, but it's usually, this last one was behind the paywall, so I probably booked the rules saying it, but it's not usually public and it's pretty rare, but it's becoming more and more evident. And I've never said that. I understand he never will step down. And I also understand that if he did, we'd be stuck with Governor Juliana Stratton, which also would not be an improvement. So I understand the realities here. But I got to tell you, at this point, it's just the stories are piling up. And when you see at DCFS, this is kids, these are the disadvantaged children. We're talking about deaths and serious illnesses. This is not just, oh, hey, they got a check a day late. The failures of this administration are impacting lives, especially kids. We see, they talk about how these disadvantaged communities, need these after school programs because it keeps kids from going into gangs and a life of crime. So why don't you then release the damn funds? It should be a priority. And I know they're trying to blame the legislature. It's Chris Welch's fault. No, it's not. If the governor was here and actually cared, he'd find a way to make sure those funds were released. But he's not. And that's my point, is you know what? I'd rather have a bad governor than no governor. So put Stratton in there or pick your other Democrat. I don't care. But let's give us a governor at least who's going to pay attention for the next couple of years, because this is impacting kids and people's lives.
You
Every once in
ready?
a while, my rant is just so epic that nobody else really cares to follow. Have
Are
I
you?
done it? Have I killed it? Is the topic over?
No, no. You know, Pritzker was running for president from the very beginning. You go back to the very first initiative, and it was the minimum wage. Everything he's done from the very, very beginning is laying a foundation to run for president from the left. It was obvious. I watched Mike Madigan walk around the House floor, bringing his hands on the marijuana stuff. This was all orchestrated from the very beginning. And don't get me started on DCFS. I fought those people. I'm still fighting them, even though I'm not in office.
Well, and then the thing that kills me, Dan, is the like every time something comes out about DCFS, there's two stories in the last week about DCFS. There's the Illinois Answers Project. That's the big one here, talking about how they haven't filed the paperwork. And this is serious. And their response, if you read it, is we meet and exceed the duty under the law to report on these cases through rigorous reviews. Like their response is A, everything's fine, and B, there's no caring here. There's no like, yeah, this is important. These are kids, we're working on it. It's just we're perfect, everything's fine. Then there was a smaller thing that came out in Capitol News this week about how there was a bill passed because when kids would be transferred, most of the time they'd take their luggage in trash bags because they didn't have luggage. And so Springfield passed a bill that would make sure they had some luggage, but it was never actually followed. So you've got Margaret Croak has a bill, House Bill 10, that's there right now, and she's pulling it back. She's not actually going to run it because she said, and I've got the quote right here, I talked to DCFS, they said everything was fine, so we're good. Like, that's DCFS's response every time. And tell me anybody who lives in the state, who's watched the news, who's seen the reports, who's read, or who happens to sadly know someone in the system, no one will tell you that it's fine. But every time their response is, it's fine. And if we had a real governor, they'd step up and say, I'm going to fix this. I'm going to do it right now because I care about kids. But we don't.
Well, we have the new director. You know, she comes out of this child advocacy program, and everybody was, applauding and what a great appointment and what a great opportunity. And there's been virtually no change. Now there are good people, and I'm fortunate enough to have contact with some of them. But the problem, the real problem, and it's not money. The problem is it's the entrenched bureaucracy. We see it in the federal government. But we did the DCFS working group, nonpartisan, House, Senate, 6 of us on each side of the table. And for 5 years, we met sporadically. Not one thing, not one piece of legislation came out of that DCFS working group. And I proposed time after time after time. I said, let's set up a fund. Let's set up a fund for families so that they have an equal shot at justice. Because right now you got $1 billion state agency that comes down on a family, and generally a single mom, taking her kids, and doesn't have the wherewithal, the financial wherewithal to fight to keep her kids even, just to make the playing field level. They show up in court, they get a public defender for 15 minutes, and she goes in and loses custody of her children. That's not right. And this system is broken. It's not right. And the lady that's in charge of it now isn't doing the job. And there's going to be more and more. You're seeing the worst of the worst. Talk to some parents that have lost their kids to DCFS that never had a fighting chance.
Well, and this is the thing, Dan, and we talk about being fiscally responsible versus being fiscally conservative. I can tell you that the religious individuals that I know, the families, even fiscally conservative people, they would get on board if you had a plan that said, "Here's how we're going to fix it," and yes, it's going to cost a few bucks. We're talking about kids. We're talking about caring for Illinoisans. You'd see a lot of even conservative support for something like that if there was actually some effort put into it. What we don't want is money spent. Let's maybe not spend $1.5 billion on non-citizens, but we'd be willing to spend a few bucks on the kids in this state who need the support that DCFS needs, those reforms. And yeah, maybe it does need a few bucks. As you said, it's not just throw money at the problem. Give us reforms, and then also if we need to talk about some more funding, let's have that conversation. I know a lot of conservatives that could get on board with that, but that's just not what they're doing. They're saying every year let's just toss a few extra bucks at the problem, and every year the problems just persist.
Well, if I can add in there, what I've seen just in general is that, they have DCFS hires or pays these outside agencies, their outside nonprofits to actually take the cases on. Well, so now you have 20 different agencies that all have their own different procedures and policies, and there's no oversight. So if one of their people, one of their workers goes in and says, no, I'm going to take this kid, and they're trying to work towards the solution. And it appears that, especially if it's an infant, there is generally a push not to have a solution because they're getting more money when they place a child in adoption, a baby in adoption. Well, of course, everybody wants a baby. They don't want a 10-year-old. So that's, not having that oversight. And what do? If they have a problem with an employee, they just fire them, and there's nothing else done. Then another caseworker jumps on. And this is a constant rotation. And I've talked to people that have had their kids taken away, and it's over and over. They have different caseworkers, they have different agencies, and again, no oversight whatsoever. There's no consequences for anything that an agency does intentionally to take a child away.
All right, before my blood pressure goes through the roof, I think it's time to jump to the next topic. Everybody good here? All right, let's talk politics, and I'll simmer down for a few minutes and let you guys carry the conversation. So there's a lot of rumors out there right now. I mean, we're seeing Jamie Pritzker's tune clearly has changed somewhat. I mean, a week or two ago, the words, the phrases, the way he was presenting it seemed like he was running. And I kind of even said last week it seemed like that was the direction things were go. But then lately, the last week, now it's the other route where he's like, well, whatever I do, I'll still be in the fight. I mean, there's definitely some new language there that's interesting. And then there's the speculation over Dick Durbin. Does he run? Juliana Stratton put out publicly, this was kind of crazy, that she'd be running for Senate if Durbin doesn't, and that she already has Pritzker's backing. There's a lot of people wondering, will she run even if Dick Durbin does run, especially after Durbin voted for cloture with the budget or the stopgap spending or whatever it is I'm supposed to call it. There's a lot of speculation here on who does or doesn't run for what. And obviously on the Republican side, we're hearing different names of people potentially running. Blaine Wilhauer's name has been bandied about a lot lately. Obviously, we've talked about Jim Mendrick, and we'll talk about him a lot next for our next topic. There's other people spreading their names around. So this is a bit of a catch-all on 2026. What do you guys want to talk about? Who do you want to talk about? What is your favorite drama you want to dive into here for the 2026 statewide races? Go for it.
Well,
I'm officially no. Go ahead. I was going to make an announcement, but I'll yield to you, Chris.
Okay. I've been pondering this because I've noticed the same thing that Collin has. There's been a shift in Pritzker's tone over the past week, and right now I'm thinking that it may be possible that Pritzker saw Durbin's vote for cloture and said, if he runs, I'll primary him. If he doesn't run, then we'll have Stratton do it. Okay? That would be a reason I can think of why he might be changing his tune right now, because he might be looking at Durbin's yes vote on that and thinking that's a really easy message for me to get out there, that Dick Durbin supports Donald Trump and I can take the Senate seat that way. But if he doesn't run, then he might as well just waltz into a third term, because he's going to waltz into a third term, guys. I don't think anybody disagrees with me on that point. But he'll just waltz right into a third term and call it a day at that.
Well, I think that the vote that Durbin took, I mean, like Chris has said time and time again, we're not going to believe that Dick Durbin is retiring or not running again until we see either a press release or the obituary, right? I mean, he's been in politics his entire career. Like, whenever he decides to go, that's when it's going to happen. But I think that the vote that he took on the continuing resolution is a sign that he may not be running for another term, because they needed 7 Democrat votes in the Senate to get it through, since we have 53 Republicans. 3 of the Democrats that voted with the Republicans are ones that have already announced that they're retiring. So it would not surprise me one bit if Dick Durbin has decided that he's not running. And if that's the case, I think Pritzker stays put and Juliana runs for it.
Listen, or Pritzker just doesn't run for one of the offices. That is also an option here. But let me point out something. I saw this. So Isabel hopefully I'm saying her name right, Miller from Cat Facts. She asked Durbin today on Thursday if he's running again. He said soon he'd announce. But I thought this was really telling. She asked what factors will help you make that decision. And here's what he said: whether I'm physically able, mentally able to deal with the issues. He said, I still have my wits about me, but here's the phrase that just really jumped out at me. And when it comes to the physical side of it, up and moving around, taking nourishment. Like, I don't, when you're using words like that, like no one uses the word nourishment unless you're in an assisted living facility. Like who uses that actual word? Like he's not talking about, can I do the job? Or like Mark Kirk, can I walk the steps of the Capitol? Literally, can I take nourishment? If I can, I'll still do the job. Like to the point of Chris, like he's either going to die in office or maybe Pritzker knocks him out. I don't know. But like who uses words like that? Like how out of touch these old DC politicians are that are, in their 70s and 80s, or we've got Preckwinkle, 130 years old, and she's running for re-election in Cook County. Like these politicians have been around who are career politicians. That's how out of touch they are. Well, if I could still take nourishment, I'll run again. Like who says that?
Well, and I think what you're seeing now with Schumer being dogged and beaten up by the Democrats, if they actually get Schumer to step down, Durbin's not in a place to step up because he made the same damn vote. He took the same vote, and if that's the reason they're getting rid of Schumer, he's got nowhere to go. And it can't be fun being in the minority now at his stature and his time in service. I just don't see him doing it again. I really don't. I see Pritzker doing it. It's just the Obama template. You go to DC, you travel the world, you build your bona fides with your international portfolio and run for president, just like Barack did.
Well, if you're Durbin, I think the question has to be why do it again? I mean, as you talked about being in the minority, I mean, Trump's about to unveil his first round of judiciary picks. He's going to ram those through. Durbin can't stop it. Like watching how powerless you are is certainly not going to be fun. And also seeing how his Democratic Party has changed. I mean, we've talked over and over on these podcasts about how different today's Democratic Party is. To your point, it's an excellent point, Dan. He will not be leader of that party. It's done. It's over. It will not happen. And Durbin's been holding on for a very long time because he's very high in the list in the line for leadership. And up until this party, yeah, you're right. And up until this party has changed so progressively over the last, I don't know what, 6, 8, 10 years, he was on that path. At this point, he will never ever be leader, whether minority leader or majority leader, it doesn't matter. He will never ever be leader of that caucus in the Senate. Clearly, he's figured that out at this point. And so I come back to, what's the point other than if you want to die in office? What's the point of running again?
Well, I think it's only going to get. Sorry, Chris. Go ahead. I've talked.
No, I was just saying, if he runs again, it is going to basically give JB Pritzker a big middle finger because they hate each other, and he's like, if you want someone to have my seat, you should run against me, JB. That's basically that's what politics is like. That at the end of the day, guys, like it isn't rational sometimes. It doesn't have logic to it. Sometimes it's just petty beefs and disagreements that boil these things over. Like we can talk until the heat death of the universe about what if he does this? What if he does that? He might be thinking this in the Senate Judiciary Committee and the Wednesday. No, he might just do it to say, screw you, Pritzker. You're not getting my fucking seat, buddy. Like that could be all of what this is.
Certainly possible. Michael, go ahead.
Well, I just think it's only going to get worse for the Senate Dems. Like that's honestly, if you think about it, like that's probably like the worst job that you can have right now is being a U.S. Senator on the Democratic side, because the Republicans have a 53-seat majority. There's nothing really that you can do there. If you look at the map for 2026, there's not really any pickup opportunities for them, and they've got to defend these seats where you've got Democrat incumbents that are choosing not to run again. You've got everybody's pissed off. Or all the Democrats and liberals are pissed off at them, including like AOC and Nancy Pelosi, because they didn't stand up to Trump, right? So the first opportunity for them to have a Democrat majority in the U.S. Senate is January of 2029. So if you're Dick Durbin, do you want to stick it out? I mean, that's a long time.
Well, we'll keep an eye on it. We'll keep talking about it. Let's stick with politics here. Let's make a shift to, as I mentioned, we're talking next about Jim Mendrick, his campaign. He has made significant news. Intentionally here, he's announced his running mate very early in the process. Some people like that he's done it early. Some people have talked about not liking that. I'm curious what our 5 panelists this week think about it. Robert Renteria is his choice. He's an Aurora businessman. Patrick Finkson of the Illinois had the scoop here on this over the last week. He rolled this out on Friday morning, which anybody who knows politics and campaigning knows Friday is when you dump the news that you don't want anybody to hear. We're continuing to see the Mendrick campaign itself not necessarily be run super well. As I talked about last week, he gave a pretty good interview in Springfield, so there's certainly potential there. But the campaign itself has people questioning the running mate. And there's a lot of people who've questioned the running mate that was chosen. I've seen a lot of chatter on social media about people not being happy with the choice. So before I color this too much more with my thoughts, what do you guys think here?
I just think why would you do it now? I mean, it doesn't make sense to me. I think it's a strategic error. Usually you want to do that kind of later in the year, get a little excitement going, get some press out of it. You roll it out on a Friday morning before, most people are even out the gate. I mean, it just doesn't make sense. And I mean, we'll see if he shapes up and gets his ducks in a row. But
well, I mean, the article that Patrick wrote, a GOP operative who was unnamed quoted that this is all part of a specific strategy to hit the ground running while the rest of the field's trying to get in the race, and they thought it was a potentially smart move, and that was the goal: get out early. The problem is if your strategy is to lap the field before they start, you got to wow us with a great operation, not wake up one morning and write a Facebook post about how you want to run for governor. Like if the whole goal here is to crowd the field out before the field gets in, then you got to be running a really good campaign. That's not what's happening here. As a matter of fact, the different people I've talked to who are either thinking about running or are tied to someone who is thinking about running have all said this has emboldened them more. It hasn't pushed them away. And Chris, Michael, I mean, for a lot of our clients, we've done work to push away potential opponents. I'm looking at these April 1st elections. We've got over, I got to do the math, but over 20, maybe even over 30 different people we helped before the election season even started to scare away opposition so that they never even got an opponent. There's a strategy to be done there. But again, it's about you put money in the bank, you show you're a tough campaign, you show you're ready to win, you show you've got the chops, and you scare people away. But that's not what's happening here. So if the goal is to scare away opposition and show you're for real, I don't necessarily see that happening.
Collin, is any Republican candidate capable of scaring away opposition?
Other than Darren LaHood, no.
So, but again, my reaction
or Dan Caulkins, right?
Yeah, of course, and Chris Jackowiak, but I'd be running as a Democrat. But in any case, my point is that who is this guy? I saw everyone was texting me on Friday when I'm trying to do actual work, and they're like, "Did you see who Mendrick announced to be his running mate?" I'm like, "I don't know who this jamoke is." I mean, listen, I think it's a great idea to have a Hispanic as the light gov candidate. That's a great idea. The Republican Party is making gains with Hispanics, and we need good outreach in that community if you want to build the Republican Party. But who is this guy? What has he ever done? What has he ever done for the Republican Party? What has he ever done in politics? Nobody knows who this guy is. So no one's shaking in their boots. The Democrats are outside having a cigarette right now and a beer, not even paying attention to the nonsense that goes on in the Republican Party. And here we are talking about Mendrick and all this stuff. It's like nobody's clearing the field right now. It's definitely not Jim Mendrick.
Well, and the Renteria choice, I mean, listen, if you're thinking towards a general election, certainly having an Hispanic is awesome. I like that, and I certainly applaud diversity on our slates, and I hope more candidates do that. But you're looking at, I mean, this is going to be a problem for him in the primary. He's donated to Democrats. There's rumors, at least, that he's pro-choice. I haven't seen anything that's proven that. But he's made some comments. I've already seen text sent to me that I won't read on air, but that he's made some comments that are going to bite them in the butt in this election during the primary. I mean, this is, you're sort of running as if you're already in the general election, but you got to get to the primary first. And that's the problem here is this is a general election choice when we're going to be in the Trump primary, and you got to make it through a primary field. So I don't know that it helps you there. And then it doubles down on crime. And let's be real. I mean, we did our quarterly poll on the issues that matter to Illinoisans, and it was going to be in our agenda this week, but we didn't have time. So we'll have to push it to next week. But that quarterly poll will once again show that crime is not the top issue to voters in this state. It's not even top 3. It's not even top 5. And so you see here that Mendrick's doubling down on an issue that isn't necessarily resonating with voters. Your light gov pick is putting you even more in the crime category. And while those of us on this podcast would love to see improvements in crime in the state, you got to win an election first, and it's just you got to get votes to win that election.
It's the economy, still the economy, I'll bet.
Yeah, you're not wrong. We will hopefully we'll have time next week to dive into it, and we'll share some of those details for free with our audience. All right, let's go to our last political topic here. We got to talk about this, the RINO removal pack. I'm sure this will put some of our guests in an interesting position, but Tom Devore has created this brand new pack called the RINO removal pack. They are specifically targeting Tony McCombie, Noreen Hammond, and Charlie Meier. If you're wondering why those are the choices, it's because that's who Tom Devore hates the most, except for occasionally me and, of course, many other people. And so he's looking to fund primary challenges to McCombie and Hammond. Why those two and not the rest of the leadership team, who knows? And of course, Tom Devore has always wanted to defeat Charlie Meier and run himself for state rep, so Charlie Meier is on the list as well. So I don't know. Obviously, I'm quite negative, as you can tell by my tone. I don't love it. I have, to my own detriment, I have gotten a lot of texts and angry calls because I have said nice things about Tom Devore in the past. And I've said also mean things about Tom Devore in the past, because sometimes he does things good and sometimes he does things badly. This is one of those that goes in the bad category. This is all personal beef on Tom Devore's part. And all this does is helps fracture our Republican Party even more at a time where we can't afford it. So I'm not super pleased about it. And again, it's a personal beef. If you want to go after every Republican that you think has been bad on policy, go for it. But then your target list doesn't look like this. It's not just these three. There's more people on the list and maybe even some adjustments to the list. This is just a personal beef, but it won't matter because Tom Devore can't raise money. So this is going to be a non-story in 12 months. But either way, it's news. So I'm bringing it up. If you guys have thoughts, feel free to jump in.
I'll jump in on that. Just all of his postings recently and all of the damage that he's actually done to our party. He's doing nothing to make things better. He's done nothing to uplift our party. And if anything, like I've always been a moderate Republican, and we've tried to win on the ultra conservative Republican side. We will never win that way. And the more he attacks people for being moderate or semi-moderate, the worse it's going to get. We will never win in Illinois under that canopy.
But Sharon, just one clarification, because I know you're more moderate, but let's be real about the people we're talking about. You're talking Tony McCombie, Noreen Hammond, Charlie Meier, people who have made 1 or 2 or 3 votes that Devore doesn't like. We're not talking about
Right.
mine. We're talking about conservatives who are Trump-loving conservatives who made a couple votes you didn't like. We're not talking Sharon Langlotz-Johnson.
No, and I agree.
We're not talking Trump. No, we're not talking Trump-loving Republicans. No.
You tell me Charlie Meier is not a Donald Trump supporter.
He may be now that Trump's the president, but
he was a delegate for Trump this last election. Alternate.
He might have been. But these people have whined and complained about Trump being on the top of the ticket for 8 years. He drags the party down. He drags us down in our elections. He hurts the party. I'm not defending what Tom's doing. I don't think it's right, and I don't get along with Tom. But let's be fair about who's a Trump lover.
All right, so we'll remove that line then. I mean, I disagree with you, but I respect you, so I'll remove that line. But these are still conservatives. I mean, they are way more conservative than maybe you're going to see a lot of Republicans up here in the suburbs, and yet we're going after them. I mean, this is not like they're trying to take out a Sharon Johnson or a Mark Kirk or a out and out Pat Brady moderate Republican. That's not who he's targeting here. That's what drives me crazy.
and who is going to replace these people? Quite frankly. We don't have candidates that are good enough now that go out there. We can't win regular races. I mean, the easy races we can barely win. And even the ones we should have won, we still can't win. So now you're going to take out the people that are actually doing well in their district and are easily elected. What? So a Democrat can walk in? That should not be our goal by any means. And Tom Devore is making this personal. He does not like them. I don't know why. I don't care. But when you're putting negative aspects on the Republican Party, and all you're doing is helping the Democrats. It's the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen.
Yeah. And again, I mean, check the tape. I'd be happy to show. I have defended Tom more times than I can count. I've defended the Freedom Caucus more times than I can count. And I've taken a tremendous amount of heat from people for doing so. So I can be considered here a fair and balanced a voice on this. And I just, listen, I also don't like Tony McCombie. It's not news to anybody, but I'm not challenging her in a primary. She's part of our party. And if you want to be an adult in politics, it means you've got to work with people that maybe you don't get along with. And yeah, I don't get along with Tony McCombie, but she's our leader. And I have given her praise on numerous podcasts, especially recently. So if you want to be an adult in the room in politics, you got to work with people that maybe you don't like. But unfortunately, the children are the ones that are that have the Facebook accounts that people seem to follow right now.
Well,
Oh, Michael's been trying to jump in. Let's let him go ahead.
no, it's all right. I mean, I think especially like in 2026 midterm election cycle, there's two groups that we really have to work on. There's people that voted for President Trump but didn't show up in 2022, right? You don't have to convince them to vote Republican. You have to convince them to vote, right? And then you have other individuals that you have to persuade to vote Republican. We've got a diverse party in this state, even though we only have 40 members in the House, right? You have your Freedom Caucus members who are an important part, and then you have people like Amy Ellick and Kevin Schmidt who have flipped seats that were held by Democrats for decades, just in the last 4 years. We need to figure out a way to thread this needle. And, I think Tom and Darren and Freedom Caucus members could be an asset in motivating those Republicans to get out and vote in a midterm election that typically don't. And then we've got to have people like Amy and Kevin and Tony that have flipped seats that were previously held by Democrats. They need to be working on those persuadable voters and saying, hey, this is why you need to start voting Republican. It's not one or the other. And if we keep doing this like one or the other, like you're either with Tom Devore or you're not, or you're either with Tony McCombie or you're not, then we're going to continue getting the same results that we've been getting, and that's not good.
Well, and Michael, you're right. I mean, that's and both sides have fallen prey to this because they definitely have made sides here. Where if you're not part of Tony McCombie's crew, you're on the outs. I'm not. We're not. So she goes after us and attacks us and does so publicly. Same with Devore. You're part of his crew or you're not. And if you're not, he attacks you like he's attacked me on his social media. Like it's just we're this tribalism has even made it into our own party now, where you've got to pick sides. And to your point, we're never going to win if it's I'm on one side or the other. Because guess what? Devore and McCombie, I'm on neither of your sides because both of you have been acting like children lately. So like it's not an or situation because it's a neither right now. But you know what? Let's grow up and let's be an and here, because if we're going to get out of the supermajority in a state like Illinois, where most people represent themselves as moderates, which means we could win their votes. It's moderates number one, conservatives number two, liberals number three. That's how people identify in this state. And yet we've got a Republican Party that's in the super minority. We should not be in a super minority in this state. It is not a deep blue state. And yet we can't seem to win because all we do is fight each other.
Look, Collin, since you've so adequately said that stupidity is what sells in the Republican Party in the state, I am going to make an announcement today that I am launching my own RINO removal pack in order to fight back against the anti-Trump, anti-Republican narrative of such heinous creatures such as radical RINO Blaine Wilhauer and his anti-working class agenda down in Springfield. Money will not be an issue, folks. I am on the phone with several very wealthy people, both inside and outside of the state of Florida, because that's where all the money in this state's at. So that's where I'm going to get it. So in order to fund my operation to take out the anti-Trump, anti-working class agenda of radical RINOs such as Blaine Wilhauer, and I am also joking.
Yeah, but see, isn't that the thing?
But isn't that the thing? Let me finish my point. This is stupid because the Republican Party has nothing to offer. There are no spoils for the Republican Party. And yet, here we are bickering like medieval fiefdoms about who gets to control the pieces of the Republican Party, which has no power, no say in the way the state's governed, and yet we're trying to control what in all reality is a withered husk, is what it is. That's what we're trying. We're trying to control a vacant island. That's what these people are fighting for control over. And that's why it's so stupid. If everybody got in a room all these personalities and all of these elected officials and said, we're going to split up the Republican Party and then we're going to try and win in 2026, that could be more effective. It'll never happen. There are too many egos involved. And there are too many people who are willing to say what I just said and actually mean it, and then go out there and fail. And then they're going to do it again and again and again, because the people will always give them a platform. People will always listen, because stupidity is what sells in the Republican Party.
Well, and Chris, the thing that kills me is, what's your definition of rhino? Because your joking example was a really good one, because there are people who align with Trump's pro-union agenda who would say that anybody who is anti-union is now considered a rhino because Trump is more pro-union. So your joke about people like Will Howard, I mean, someone might say that's their definition of a rhino. And then the next person might say their definition of a rhino is, do they align or not align with Tom Devore's latest feelings on politics? And then the next person says, you're a rhino if you did or didn't vote on this one bill at this one time. I mean, it's just, everyone has their own definition of what makes themselves a real Republican and other people not a real Republican. And what we've talked about a lot in this podcast is a lot of those people who are setting purity tests up for others wouldn't have passed their own purity test a couple years ago. I mean, how many people have come to this party thanks to Trump and others who used to be Democrats 2 or 4 or 6 years ago? And we know that that's a good thing. They've seen the light and they've come to our party, and yet now they're putting litmus tests saying, well, you know what? I came to the Republican Party, but you don't get to now that you've switched your allegiance. I mean, it's just, we spend all of our time fighting each other because we can't defeat the other side. And I'm sick and tired of it, because I get the benefit of getting to work in other states where this bullcrap doesn't happen. And guess what? In those other states, Republicans are winning. It's not a surprise.
One man's rhino is another man's fascist. Always remember that.
There you go. All right, we're going to move to our second to last segment here. This is our news you can use segment. This is quick hits. I'm going to go through this pretty fast. What we like to do here is equip you as our viewer or our listener with some of the things you need to be aware of, whether it's a bad bill down in Springfield or some news that you can use that's happened, where you can share it in a social media post, do some fundraising off of it, put out a press release. Somehow you can make hay to show just how far left and crazy Democrats or failed they are in this state, and how you might do a better job as so-and-so Republican or conservative. First thing let's talk about is House Bill 3709 and Senate Bill 2444. This is a group of Senate Democrats who want to make sure that there's not only contraception, but also abortion available on all Illinois college campuses. And so if you read through the language of the bill, it's to make sure that medication, contraception, medication, abortion is available, readily available on campus for anybody who might want it. And by the way, they're even crossing out some of the things like that were originally in the law, like it needed to be, the abortion pill was one that needed to be approved by the FDA. They don't care about that anymore. And they also crossed out another thing in here, which was that these public institutions would have to work with tertiary care facilities, with gynecological services, obstetric services, basically medical services. They even crossed that out, because the goal here isn't medical care. It's just make sure that these kids can have sex and have abortion pills anytime that they want them. But supposedly, according to the Democrats, we Republicans are obsessed with sex. And yet bill after bill after bill after bill, we see Democrats pushing things like this. Anybody have any quick thoughts?
I do.
I
do.
Katie, you can go first.
Yeah, I mean, on that abortion one, I did exactly what you did. I read it, and then I read the amendment that takes away all the actual physical protections. And it's just so gross the way the Democrats message about abortion in general. But just like, if you really dig into the bill like we are here, there's absolutely no protections for women in this very, very dangerous pill. Even over-the-counter contraception, we're kind of in this like new like MAHA movement as well. And we're kind of learning that yeah, just like taking all these contraceptive methods like actually aren't that great for you, but it's like Democrats just continue to want to do this to young, vulnerable women on college campuses. So I was especially disturbed by that bill.
My point was going to be that in the 60s and 70s, the pro-choice and the Pat Brady's of the world, they would talk about how, if you were pro-life, you wanted women to have back alley abortions, and they always had the coat hanger bill posters at all of their events and rallies. But even if abortion is going to be legal, and it's going to be legal, the pro-lifers have lost. Isn't it make sense to actually have medical protections for abortion, to actually make sure that if women are going to pursue abortion services, that they're going to be that they're not going to be, harmed by doing this. It's ludicrous to me that even if abortion is going to be legal, there can't be medical protections in getting an abortion.
Yeah,
Doesn't make any
if it
sense.
truly is actually medical care, then let's maybe treat it like medical care. That seems like common sense.
And to exempt them from medical malpractice.
Well,
Specific.
there's a rabbit trail we could definitely go down on this one. But and you're not wrong. But let's keep moving along just so we can get through these quickly. Next bill I want to talk about is Senate Bill 2264. We talked about, I think it was a different bill that we talked about, though I guess it could have been the same one a few weeks ago, about how Democrats are trying to weaken crime-free housing, basically eliminate it essentially. Well, Don Harmon has joined in on the effort now, where this bill specifically significantly waters down crime-free housing throughout the state. It also creates a brand new entity that counties would have to create, and a position that they would have to create if they want to do crime-free housing in their county, which means it's an unfunded mandate on counties. This is basically a behemoth of a bill. I don't think it intended to start that way. But the whole goal here is to restrict it to the point where you just can't have crime-free housing, any sort of rules or laws in place or ordinances in place. And the thing is, even Brad Cole from IMRF or IML came out against this, as did police and a few other groups. The Illinois Association of Chiefs of Police came out against it. This is not only a giant overreach from Springfield, but you're also saying that these municipalities don't have the power to try to keep individuals who have these criminal records out of their communities, that landlords don't have the ability to mitigate crime in buildings that they own. Like, this is a huge overreach from Springfield. Not that that's surprising. And I don't know. I think if you're somebody who believes in a pro-criminal agenda, like most Democrats nowadays in Illinois, you probably love this. But for the average person who doesn't want that level of crime in their communities, this is not something they'd be super pleased with. Sharon, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I know you served at the township level. I mean, does something like this sound good to you or sound crazy to you? You're trying to, there you go.
Well, anything that is pro criminal, obviously I'm going to be against. Everything that they put forward is always an anti-police and pro-criminal bill, and I see them coming through every single day. I just, how do you comment on a group of people that just hate the police on a regular basis and want all the criminals to walk away? I mean, there's so many things out there that aren't. I get frustrated and half the time speechless, because I can't believe the ignorance and their ability of wanting more crime, and that's just how they are.
Yeah, well, and this is what always happens with these bills. What Harmon has said is, well, this is actually intended to help make sure that if you call 911 because of something that you need help with, you couldn't be evicted. That's what they're claiming is the reason here. But again, you got to go past what they claim and actually read the language of the bill. And the language of the bill makes it nearly impossible to have any kind of crime-free housing. This includes, you can't even keep people out of housing if they have an arrest record. It's literally crossed out in the bill. You can see it if you read it. And so it's just, again, it's you got to look past their language and look at what they're actually doing in these bills. The problem is that's not done too often.
Collin, they're trying to push a bill right now that police officers cannot stop a car if they smell marijuana coming out of it.
We talked about that. Yeah.
I mean, are you insane? There is a huge increase in fatal crashes with people that were high on pot. There's a huge increase in the country. So that's what they want, is more people dead. I mean, seriously.
Last week we talked about how they're decriminalizing attacking police as long as you say you were having a mental health episode. So we could again go down a rabbit trail.
That was another one. And
let me keep us moving along, since this is intended to be our quick hit. So let's go to the next one. House Bill 1234, conveniently numbered, is Reps Rita Mayfield and Lillian Jimenez, who want to pass a bill that would create a commission. Essentially, the whole goal, let me just skip to the end, is to make sure that auto insurers can't discriminate based on your credit score, your zip code, your race, or your age. I got to tell you, as somebody who paid higher rates for my insurance when I was a young driver, as a male driver, I understand. Young male drivers are horrible drivers, and we should pay more for insurance than those super safe 45-year-olds who are going 5 miles under the speed limit. The idea here, though, that you wouldn't let insurance carriers adjust their rates based on what zip code you're in, what age you might be. This is all it's going to do is raise insurance rates for everybody who buys car insurance. That's the only option then. If you could only charge the same rate to everyone, regardless of their accident history or the risk associated with that type of driver, that individual driver, then all that means is all the rest of us are going to have to pay higher insurance rates. So, why am I highlighting this bill? I'm highlighting this bill because as Republicans, we need to be screaming constantly about the cost of living in this state. And this is yet another time where Democrats in Springfield are trying to push a bill that will raise the cost of living for working families in this state. It's not always the big stuff like big tax increases. Oftentimes it's a bill here that will slightly increase your health insurance, and then a bill here that will slightly increase your gas taxes, and then a bill here that, like we're talking about HB 1234, which will slightly increase your auto insurance rates. It's over and over and over, and Democrats constantly are pushing bills like this that raise the cost of living in Illinois. And then during election season, they run TV ads going, "We've lowered your cost of living." It's BS, and we got to do a better job of calling them out on it over and over because this is constant with them.
Yeah, Collin, I have to say there are certain parts of that bill I do like. There are people that have bad credit ratings because of a divorce or things like that, and they hit them hard on that. Or the seniors, there's some seniors that are really good drivers, but the minute you turn 65, your rates go up, which is 5 years from now for me. And it's those kind of things. I get the younger person thing. That's just common. But when you start hitting somebody because of their credit rating, they're already struggling if they have a bad credit rating. And now you're going to raise their insurance rates? That's kind of insane.
Yeah, I mean, well, I do get that. Then maybe take a rifle approach instead of a shotgun approach. And instead of
Right.
outlawing it entirely, go figure out a better way to do it, which,
Yeah.
Is not the way
Agreed.
Illinois works.
Well, I mean, just quickly, imagine what this is going to do to people that are in like more in those rural zip codes where they don't have, it's, very small populations, not a lot of crime. They're more likely to hit a deer than they are to hit somebody in another car, right? And theirs are going to go through the roof. They're going to have people in Belle Rive paying the same rates as people in Chicago. And it's like not logical.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's just the reality. All right, last two things here in this section. These aren't bills. They're just things you guys need to be aware of. I'm sure none of you are shocked to hear this one, but Wire Points came out with something which was very helpful here, as they often do, showing that Illinois today has fewer private sector jobs than it did in 2019. I'll say that again. Illinois today has fewer jobs in the private sector than it did in 2019. Right, that's the real record of J.B. Pritzker as governor of the state and as the Democrats in the state. While all the other Midwestern states are increasing in jobs, while tons of other states in the country are increasing in jobs, we see that outside of government, the employment in the state is down in the last, 5-6 years, depending on how you're timing that out. That's a significant stat, and it needs to be talked about much more frequently. While J.B. Pritzker runs around the state talking about how he's creating so many jobs, the reality is that's actually not happening.
Well, I think you go back 2019, that was right before COVID. So that just shows you that we've never recovered from all of those jobs that were lost over the course of, those 2 to 3 years where we were dealing with that situation.
Well, it's the 5th worst performance in the nation, and every other state also had to deal with COVID. So, Michael, while I totally get the point you're making,
I'm agreeing. I'm trying to make the same point you're making. That every other state got to figure it out, and here we are, worse off now than we were 5 years ago.
Exactly. Yeah. All right. Last one here. A handful of left-leaning organizations who haven't met a tax increase they didn't want to advocate for has decided that they're going to really hyper-focus right now on expanding the sales tax in Illinois. So they're coming out, Civic Federation, CMAP, Illinois Economic Policy Institute, CTBA, a couple others. They're all coming out saying the solution to our problems, our budgetary problems, the solution is more taxes, specifically a sales tax. They're saying this will generate another $2 billion Waukegan. Now, the key word revenue, of course, they always want to use that word revenue. It's not taxes, it's revenue. And now you might be wondering, maybe is this money that's going to be used to offset property taxes in some way, since our property taxes are ridiculously high? Or maybe would they expand the sales tax to services so that they could maybe reduce the number overall, since everybody agrees that sales taxes are disproportionately paid by lower income individuals? No, no, no. It's added on top of all the other taxes. They want to add this as another $2 billion to go towards transit and pensions and more education spending and all sorts of other things they would love to spend money on. So it's yet another tax increase that they're pushing, not a solution to the hole in the budget. They want to do this to spend even more money. So in a state where spending is at a record high, let's raise taxes so we can spend even more. That's their solution.
Well, and then charges for 10 cents for plastic bags too, right on top of that. Imagine what your grocery bill is going to be.
Yeah. Well, they're also outlawing that tax, those bags, and then they're also working to outlaw your takeout containers. That was another one I saw that just barely missed the cut of bad bills I was going to bring up. So yeah, Dan, we just got to walk out. It's like Costco. Bring your own box and just carry it out. All right, let's go to our final segment here. OG Clown of the Week. Every participant gets a chance to list people that they want to list to give kudos to. That would be the OG category. Anybody you want to give clown or scorn for the week, that would go in that clown category. Who do you guys got?
I was going to say for OG of the week, obviously the homeschool families and everybody that filled out those witness slips. I know that's, I mean, you got to be quick on your feet because they keep adding amendments and shuffling bill numbers and all these things. 40,000 is a major accomplishment, and I hope that they continue to keep the pressure on because we desperately need it. Clown of the week, I got to say, for one, Chuck Schumer. I mean, he's gotten so much pressure from his own party that canceling your book tour and some of the comments that he's made about, being on a bike in the gym and sweaty gym shorts next to Republican senators and how he tries to work on them when he's doing it. Just straight up weird. And then you also got to say, I don't know if you're familiar with this guy, Harry Sisson. He's like a TikToker that is an influencer for the Democrats. And he kind of got outed this week for sexting women all over the country. So he gets on social media talking about how much he reveres women and we need to protect them. But then he's sexting like 12 of them at once. And
you're missing the headline there, which is they were calling him out because he was tricking them into them sharing nudes with him. So I wouldn't even call that sexting. I mean, that takes it to a level. Yeah. What else you guys got?
Hey, let me go with the OG. I'll go with the OG. I'm right there with Michael. I think Nicole, the mom of the girls in the locker room, and also Shannon Adcock from Awake, Illinois, and the pressure that they're putting on this issue. And I know that the Trump administration is now, I believe, is going to start looking into that issue at Bloomfield. My clown of the week.
Just to make sure, you're talking about Deerfield, right? The Deerfield School District?
Yeah, Deerfield, sorry. My clown of the week, I'm going with the guy that I have some respect for, who is Fred Crespo, state rep, who voted present on the school bill, on the homeschoolers bill. He spoke against it in committee and then voted present. Bad look. Fred's a better guy than that. And just tells you something about what's going on in the Democrat Party in Illinois.
That's true. All right, what else you guys got?
So I have a clown of the week. My clown of the week is co-owner of the Illinois Review, Scott Cashbar. Now, Mr. Cashbar has sent out, for the second time in 2 consolidated election cycles, he has sent out a sample ballot under the auspices of being the Republican organization of Orland Township, even though he is not the committeeman of the Orland Township Republican Organization, is in fact a separate entity, a PAC, if you will. And in his sample ballot, he endorses a slate of candidates for the township, which are most of, if not all of them, are Democrats. Now, listen, old Chris over here, he doesn't really care what you do in municipal politics. If Aaron Del Mar wants to cut the best deals, he can cut the best deals according to this commentator. But My thing is, if your job is basically having a publication, you call everybody RINOs for a living, and then you go and you put out a sample ballot claiming to be something that you're really not, and you start endorsing some Democrats, like, what are you doing here, folks? So my clown of the week, Scott Caspar, Illinois Review people, another instance of people who call people RINOs when I can easily just call them a RINO back, and we're just in RINO wars over here. Thank you.
Yeah, it seems to be the people who are most willing to use that term are also the most willing to do the things that they claim the rest of us are bad for doing.
Let me add one more sentence here, Colin. It wouldn't be that big of a deal, honestly, like I said earlier, but there's an entire slate of Republicans running for township and other offices. So it's like, if are you Republican or not, Scott?
Yeah.
Like
at the same time as they're out there claiming other people are RINOs, they're literally endorsing a slate of Democrats.
Yeah. That's what's going on. Yeah.
All right, what else you guys got?
My clowns are the dorks who are protesting outside of Tesla. I mean, there's obviously the people who take it extreme, and I think there was the one was it up north, like Buffalo Grove or something, like obvious vandalism. But then the most of them are just kind of like dorks that were all about environmentalism yesterday, but today they're not. And then I guess I'd also say that in my OG, like juxtaposition all of this was like the incredible astronaut landing this week from this guy that they apparently hate. That was just like a great American moment. So my OG would be SpaceX.
Which, of course, got buried as much as possible because we can't say anything nice about someone who's friendly with
It was
Trump.
incredible. I mean, I feel so bad for those astronauts. I'm glad they're home.
Yeah. Yeah, but it just wasn't anywhere near the level of story it would have been
No.
if it didn't happen to be tied to Elon Musk, of course.
Mhm. Yeah.
I like your usage of the word dorks. I haven't heard that word in a while, so well done.
Dorks. That's all they are.
All right, what else you guys got?
I'll put in that this is kind of I'll give kudos to U.S. District Judge LaShonda Hunt for dismissing a lawsuit against Chicago police officers because they did not pursue a carload of armed robbers. Of course, that Chicago's policy is that you cannot pursue armed robbers, and this guy apparently was nearly killed and filed a lawsuit saying that they should have gone after this car, and he wanted to hold police officers responsible, and the judge said no, they're going to get rid of it. However, she also got rid of it against the city for having the stupid policy in the first place. I was just more concerned about the police officers, obviously. I was going to give kudos to the Deerfield mom, of course, but Dan stole that from me. But let's see, my negative, Pritzker, the Democrat Party, there's a long list.
Yeah.
So.
All right, let me if you guys think of any others, feel free to jump in. I'll give a few on my end. So OG, I want to give kudos to the Illinois State Rifle Association. They came out in support of House Bill 1611, and I don't know much about that bill, so it's really not about like whether or not I support that bill itself. It's the making sure the no knock, making sure the police has to knock and announce themselves before they can come in, the Engineer Young law. All I want to point out is that, gun owners, responsible gun owners, time and time again, we point out the fact that the number one people who want to keep, crime down and guns out of the hands of those who want to do bad things with them are responsible gun owners. The Illinois State Rifle Association time and again comes out and doesn't just take a hard-line position on guns. They say, let's actually work together so that we can respect the rights that gun owners have, while also trying to reduce crime and address some of these problems that we have. ISRA does a great job of that. They don't get enough kudos for it. And I just saw them come out for a bill that I didn't expect to see many conservative support. Again, I don't know where I would fall on it if I was down in Springfield, but I just give kudos to ISRA for once again trying to find that balanced middle ground to get things done. Also,
Terrible
kudos to the
bill.
House. Kudos.
Terrible bill.
Well,
Sorry.
there you go. But at least my point still stands. Kudos to the House Republicans as well, specifically Ugasti and Sosnowski and Weber, putting out their legislative bill package to deliver property tax relief to residents across the state. Love to see stuff like this. So if we had more time, I'd read off the bills. You guys can look on the House Republican Caucus blog and they list them there. But kudos to those Republicans. Yet again, a situation where we see Republicans leading on lowering the cost of living for working families in this state. clowns. Michael already mentioned a couple of them. Michael mentioned the Downers Grove Library. I don't even know if we can bring this image up on screen. They've got a book that's targeted for kids ages 4 to 8 called My Body is Growing, with a whole page of a description of two little kids having sex and details on contraceptives and like the words they use. Honestly, I don't know that we can put it up on screen and not get censored. And this is a book targeting ages 4 to 8 in the Downers Grove Library. Michael also mentioned the soccer coach at Downers Grove South. I'm going to name names. Christina Formella, who was sexually abusing a student. Anytime I see stories like this, I name names. Bob Berlin was right that this was extremely disturbing, and I'm glad to see that they're going after her, rightfully so. I mentioned the far left people who like to claim that Democrats are obsessed with sex. I want to make them part of my clown of the week. Kelly Cassidy, Sarah McBride, constantly saying that Republicans are obsessed. Kelly Cassidy said something like, Republicans are obsessed with genitals. She said a creepy obsession with children's genitals. And yet the reality is it's Cassidy and all her allies who are filing dozens and dozens of bills related to sex and sex changes and forcing sexuality onto kids. Republicans want to talk about the cost of living and taxes and, the bigger problems we face. And yet Democrats constantly want to talk about these crazy far left issues. And yet they try to project onto us that we're the ones obsessed with sex. All right, another one here, Daniel Biss. I've been waiting for a chance to ding Daniel Biss just because he just drives me crazy. He's just got one of those punchable faces. And Dan Biss finally makes the list here because I read this in the news this week. Evanston, the city of Evanston, offers public campaign funding, which if you talk to anybody on the left, their mecca of campaign finance reform is public funding. Everybody would have to go on public funding for their campaigns. You could only spend a certain amount of money. So Evanston, as the mecca of far left policies, has put in place a program for public funding of campaign. And yet, like the hypocrite that he is, just like all the other leftists, Daniel Biss isn't even running on the program. He's raising his own money and working outside of the program. And so yet again, it's a situation of rules for you, but not for me. They want public funding for everybody else while they do whatever the hell they want. So Dan Biss, another clown of the week. All right, I'm almost done here. I'm going to save that for next week for time. Here's my last one. It's not really politics, but I saw Rep. Dan Swanson's bill, House Bill 1759, and it made me aware of something I didn't know about, that apparently if you get bit by the Lone Star tick, you could get what's called alpha-gal syndrome, which leads to a red meat allergy. And I got to tell you, if I had a red meat allergy, I don't even know what would be the point anymore. Like that's it. Just put me out to pasture, pun intended. So another clown of the week is just the Lone Star tick. My wife is obsessively scared of ticks, and suddenly now I'm going to be just like her because if I get a red meat allergy, that's it. I'm done. See y'all later. There's just no point. All right, that was a little tongue-in-cheek trying to have some fun at the end of the podcast. Let's close this down. As always, everybody gets a chance to close with their thoughts on whatever it is they want. We'll start with our guest this week. Katie, why don't you jump us off here? Final thoughts from you.
I got nothing. I'm ready to get back watching the tournament.
There you go. All right, she's going to get the most. It's always the politician who says, I'm not going to talk. Go on with your night." That gets the most applause. So kudos to Katie. All right, Dan, what are your thoughts? Dan, what are your thoughts while not being muted?
There you go. How about that? First time guest. No. I'm with Katie. I'm in a couple of pools, and my Creighton team in an upset over Louisville, so I'm still in the pool. I'm with you, Collin and Michael. The lack, or not the lack, but the show of participation, the parents that showed up in Springfield this week, the witness slips, giving a lesson, a living lesson to their children and to their communities on public participation and being involved in the process. It's an uphill battle. It always is when the Democrats have made up their mind. But these folks showed up in force 2 weeks in a row now. They were there for Pi Day, I think, last week, Cherry Pie Day. And the amount of witness slips that they generated. So it's encouraging. I hope that they carry that enthusiasm. It's infectious. And come next election, maybe we'll see some difference.
Here's hoping. I like it. Sharon, your thoughts?
I'm going to extend that. It was really amazing to see the amount of witness slips, over they were filing witness slips over a week on the original bill, but once that amendment hit, and within 12 hours, there were 30,000 witness slips within that short period of time. And, they were able to get together, and if we could just get our party to do that, we would be so much better off. And quite frankly, I think we just, if we could take some things out of their book, we'd be 1,000 times better off. But they were awesome.
Well, parents' rights is what lit Virginia on fire not that long ago. So maybe, just maybe, this is something we can capitalize on. All right, our core team brought the heat this week. I'm proud of you guys, but it was Michael who brought it even more. So, Chris, your final thoughts.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, you have seen Chris this week make even more enemies and call out other people in public yet again. And you may ask yourself, why does Chris do this? And the answer to that question is that I have no shame. I work for Republican politics in the state of Illinois. Clearly, I don't have half a brain. Clearly, I can't do anything else in my life. So that's why you see what you see before you this very day. There are 11 days until the municipal elections when you're watching this tomorrow. If you are a field director, please do your GOTV properly. Please do not leave anything to chance. And please tell me you have already started planning your election day. If you're a candidate, don't do anything stupid. Don't say anything stupid enough to the press that can make you lose your election. And don't overreact and don't freak out over every little thing. Everybody, you have a wonderful weekend. We don't get weekends in politics this time of the year, but we hope you enjoy your weekend, and God bless. Thank you.
Michael, you get the final word, buddy.
Let me think. I was just gonna say, what?
Every time I give you the final word, you make me regret it.
I know. I'm bad at this.
Put that coffee down.
File the witness slips. Don't give up. We got a state to save. We can get this thing moving in the right direction. Obviously, April 1st, right around the corner. It's always low turnout, so every vote matters. Make sure you have a plan to get out and vote. Cast a ballot for a candidate that you believe in. Say a prayer for all of the Tesla owners because they sure as heck need it.
All right, I'm going to give a closing word real quick here, but I just want to point out something that I've seen happen in Aurora. We talked about that Richard Irvin race a couple times. There's now mail out claiming that Richard Irvin endorsed Donald Trump. If anybody remembers the primary from the last election, one of the reasons Richard Irvin didn't win the Republican primary is that he refused to take a position on Trump. He refused to say whether he even voted for him. And yet here we go. Democrats are sending mail claiming he endorsed Trump. Number one, it's a bald-faced lie. I can't believe, yeah, I know in politics people just say whatever, but in Illinois, the Democrats literally will say whatever. There's nothing further from the truth. As a matter of fact, Irvin, we still don't know where he stands on Trump. He loves him and hates him at the same time, and yet here they are putting out mail saying he endorsed him. And now we see them going after Dan Brady in his race for mayor, calling him a Trump MAGA supporter, and yet Dan Brady got dinged all the time for being someone who worked with both sides of the aisle. And here's what I would simply say. In Illinois especially, stand for what you believe in. Stop waffling, because at this point, no matter what you do, no matter what you say, Democrats are going to make something up and come after you. Even if you try to say, well, I don't know if I like Trump, or I do like him, or I don't know how I feel about abortion, they're still going to say you're 100% anti-choice. They're still going to say you love Trump and you're MAGA, no matter what you say. So it's better to just come out and say what you believe, because especially in this state, Democrats are just going to attack you for it, whether it's true or whether it's false. So stand strong on principle. Say what you believe, whether it's popular or not. Don't let the Democrats scare you away from doing what you know to be right. With that, I want to thank our three guests for being with us, especially since this recording went a little long. So sorry we made you miss some March Madness, but thank you guys so much for being here. Thanks to Michael and Chris. Thanks to Lane Davis, our producer. Our next episode will be just a few days before the local elections. So make sure you get out and vote. Go vote early before you even get to the next episode, so you can spend Election Day making sure our center-right candidates win throughout the state of Illinois. In the meantime, y'all have fun watching March Madness. We'll talk to you soon.